Welcome to Talkin Divorce with Dawn and Lori,
where we bring you expert insight, real conversations, and guidance to help navigate the many stages of divorce. I'm Lori McShane, a certified divorce specialist in California real estate. Today, we're diving into a powerful topic: how to know when your marriage might be over. Are there signs we ignore? Emotional cues that we rationalize away? And what legal red flags should we look for early on? Joining me are three incredible experts: Dawn Schweitzer, certified family law specialist; Holly Freeling, licensed marriage and family therapist; and Lisa Bubari, a clinical hypnotherapist. And together, we're breaking down the emotional subconscious and legal signs that could mean your relationship is headed for a divorce, and how to face that reality with clarity and confidence. Let's start with the emotional side, because often the heart knows long before we are ready to act. Holly, what are the most common emotional red flags that indicate a marriage might be on the brink?
It's a good question. So of course, abuse. I mean, we have to start with abuse always. And sometimes we don't know. I mean, it can be insidious, like perhaps it's an emotionally abusive situation. Physical abuse is easier to identify. It could be financial abuse too. Mm-hmm. But the big ones, really, the reasons why, are usually sex, infidelity, and money. So sex is important in a relationship. It's especially in heterosexual relationships. It's what defines that relationship. So we can be friends with a lot of people. Mm-hmm. We can be have confidants, but sex is the glue, right? It's the magic eraser sometimes too in a relationship, making up and whatever. So
it's also like a personal connection.
Yeah.
So you feel like that extra.
Yeah, exactly. And so if there's a mismatch in the sex, that's often a big problem, especially if one person has a very low sex drive. Maybe they want to have sex like once a month, or maybe they're not having sex at all. That happens, and that's a real mismatch, because if you're asking someone to not have sex but yet remain faithful, what you're really asking for is celibacy. And that's very difficult for people over a long period of time. So of course that bleeds into infidelity. Mm-hmm. Very, very common reason people get divorced. Not that it's not overcomable in some situations, but if somebody has no guilt or remorse, or they just keep doing it, that's a sign that you really need to take a look. And of course money. Lots of people fight about money. You might have one spender and one saver, or kind of going back to the financial abuse, maybe somebody is hiding a lot of debt. Maybe they gambled it away and didn't tell you, or they took a risk in the stock market and lost half your retirement, that kind of stuff. So there's lots of that going on too. But it really takes everybody out of the we. You're not thinking for two anymore. There's a self-centeredness to that, and a drifting apart over time that you should really be looking at.
Interesting. And Dawn, what are, I see you nodding your head, so can you piggyback off that?
Oh, yeah. First of all, let me just say that I'm really excited about today's segment, because my approach to family law always has to think about the psychological things that people are going through. I tend to say that I specialize in human frailties. I'm looking at people that are not behaving as their normal selves. Some people might call them temporary crazy. But going into a representation, I'm always looking at the underlying things that are causing people to act and do things that they normally wouldn't do. Mm-hmm. But if we're talking about what causes the breakups, I'm not an expert, but I can tell you that I see a lot of patterns. And one of the things that I do see is there's a lot of what has already been said. You have people that are unfaithful. That's a big one. And money is definitely a big problem. I see people getting really just angry when the other side's not cooperating or participating in the financial aspect of a marriage. I remember talking to one of my clients once, and she said, I married my husband right out of college, and he had so much promise, and I married him for that promise, and you know what? He didn't keep his promise, and so he was one who he didn't participate in any of the household chores. He didn't really take care of the kids in any way, and he wasn't contributing financially. I think there was a loss of respect, and I see that as a common pattern as well. And then, of course, what's already been said by Holly, by domestic abuse. I mean, there's a lot more of that than what people believe. It may not rise to the level of violence as much as people think, but there's certainly a lot of abuse. Either there's going to be coercion, there's going to be derogatory statements, all the time, just kind of wearing on people. So those are the things that I see, and like Holly said, is you can see these patterns, and a lot of times when the relationship's over with, it's over with. There is no chance of reconciliation. So those are just some of my beginning observations, when I'm with people.
And Lisa, when people come to you for help, what inner conflicts or avoidance patterns show up that signal that they've already checked out emotionally?
Well, thank you for this question. Actually, it is a very beneficial topic nowadays to talk about this. I think by the time they get to me, which is doing the hypnotherapy part of it, they've been asked or referred to come, and they've already checked out. They already know they're going to be in a position of divorce, and emotionally they're disconnected, and physically, as Holly said, there is this disconnection happening, and they're in that functional freeze, not knowing what to do, but emotionally they are already checked out. It's like the husband and wife, as you say, it's not a we anymore. So each is on their own, and they come because they want to learn about, what did I do wrong? Why did this happen to me? So it's all the internal of, why me? Why did something go wrong? And that's where they want the help.
I see. So you also help people with their unconscious mind as well?
Well, hypnotherapy is tapping into the subconscious mind. I usually say the mind is in 3 parts, which is the conscious, look, listen, and learn. And then we have the subconscious, which stores all the information. It's the blueprint, it's our foundation that holds all our experiences, habits, behaviors, everything, right? So it also gives back. When there is a conflict or something, we have to bypass the reasoning, judging, analyzing, criticizing part of who we are, just to get to, who am I? What do I want?
Yeah, and that could
Instead
be
of
a huge journey to get there.
Exactly.
Because you're so fixed, I believe, in your ways that when you actually dive deeper, you really...
Everything starts off, as you said, they got married at a young age. What they wanted then, it's not what they want now. And so they're already emotionally disconnected. So what we do in hypnotherapy, reconnect them to themselves.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Many people stay in relationships long after they know it's no longer working. Let's talk about why and what that delay costs us emotionally and legally. So Lisa, how does denial keep people stuck? And what subconscious beliefs tend to surface during this period?
I believe denial is nothing but a defense mechanism. It's protecting us. As long as I don't see it, I don't say it, I don't do anything about it, it will continue on, it will work out, or it gets to a point that I can't do it without this, or there's a reason they stay there. So denial is saying, here's a curtain, not a wall, but a curtain, and I'm behind this curtain. As long as I don't see, I don't feel. So they go into this depleting part of themselves, and they usually cover it with what I call it other mechanisms, other defense mechanisms. What orally, what we do instead of expressing, we suppress. Drinking, eating, overeating, over drinking. So as long as we feel good at that moment, I'm not paying attention. So maybe if I deny, maybe if I don't pay attention, it will go away. It will get better. For the sake of the kids, for the sake of the parents, for the sake of,
Mm-hmm. And Holly, how can someone tell a difference between a rough patch and a deeper, more permanent disconnect?
That is an excellent
Excellent
question. Right? Yeah. That's a really hard one, because the truth is everybody has problems in their marriage. I mean, you can ask somebody who's been together for 50 years and they seem very happy, have you ever had a rough patch? I've never seen one that said no. So that's a really tough thing. Here's another thing that's very interesting. You're going to have problems. Doesn't matter who you're with. You're going to have disagreements or issues. And in fact, according to research, 69% of your problems are what we call perpetual problems. You're not getting rid of them. It comes down to how do you deal with that makes a difference. So, an example would be an introvert and an extrovert. Both people are right. There's nothing wrong with being an introvert or an extrovert. So one really wants to stay home and be cozy, and the other one wants to go out and do things. So how do you negotiate that is really where it's at. I mean, if you're coming up against things like criticism, contempt, defensive,ness, and stonewalling, when you want one or the other, instead of negotiating with each other and accepting the other person for who they are, that's the difference. There's some couples that do really well with that. Sometimes an introvert loves an extrovert because they can take the floor.
Yeah, they pull out of their shell a little bit, and they just sit back and they feel comfortable, and vice versa, right? Yeah.
And sometimes too, it comes down to which hard do you want. Staying is hard, going is hard. And you're going to have to grieve either way. So if you have a relationship where maybe you're not getting every single thing you want, which our culture teaches us is possible, which it's not. So you're going to have to grieve some of the things you're not getting in that relationship. But if you leave, you're going to have to grieve the death of a dream, the life you had, the identity you had, the social circles that you were part of as a couple, all that sort of stuff, and try to figure out how you're going to, move through that process too. Yeah. It's tough.
It's very tough, especially because there's so many emotions, and you're so used to having this pattern, and then all of a sudden the pattern is gone, and then it's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so you kind of have to redevelop yourself all over again. Yeah. And Dawn, at what point do you suggest someone quietly start speaking to a lawyer, even if they're unsure whether or not they'll leave?
Well, I think that you can never talk to an attorney early enough because the process of a divorce is very, very tough.
It is.
Okay, and folks that are going through divorces are filled with fear. It doesn't matter which side you're on. You're either the person that's going to file for divorce or the person that's going to be the respondent and be surprised by it possibly. But no matter what, one person is in denial and wants to stay in, the other one's saying, hey, I want to get out. There's a lot of emotion and fear on both sides, and I think that to cut through some of that emotion so that you could get through it and make some good decisions, talking to an attorney about what it's going to look like, and being realistic. We've talked about this on some of these other segments about being realistic of what it's going to look like at the end, because the unknown is the scary part. I always think that people have this dream, they're in a marriage and they have their life all planned out, and then all of a sudden something happens and they're radically changing that, and they can't see the future, and that just scares them to death. And I think that that's the cause of a lot of the denial. When we see people that are not wanting to end the marriage, and the other person saying it's done, but it's not. And we see the patterns of behavior that come from that, such as trying to scare the other person back into the relationship, If we do this, you're not going to have any money. You do this, we are going to go through World War III, and you're going to regret it. I mean, it's kind of crazy that this person you purport to love, that you're scaring them to try to stay with you. But we see that as one of the common, patterns. But it's all, I think, caused by fear. As Lisa stated, I think people know when the marriage isn't working, and when one person says that it's done, usually they really mean that it's done, and you get this holding on part of it that it makes it very difficult, and the very beginning of the breakup is usually where it's most volatile. That's where we see the propensity for domestic abuse or violence, even if it's never occurred in a long-term marriage, because it's just really tough. And I'd like to get people separated, living separate, during that period of time, and start thinking about survival and stuff right from the beginning because of that fear.
And one thing we often avoid talking about is how the children feel when their parents are silently struggling or they're staying together for their sake. So I'd like to ask Holly, what are some of the signs that children are being emotionally impacted, even if the parents, they haven't split yet?
Yeah, I think the big one is changes. When you notice changes, so they're eating too much, they're eating too little. They're sleeping too much, they're sleeping too little. You might notice more depression, more anxiety, more panic, more school refusal, or wanting to be away from home all the time too. Maybe they're looking for new friends. They might be looking for any life raft they can find to avoid the conflict that they feel, because the kids always know. The parents say to me often, I'm sure you hear this too, oh, the kids don't know. They know. They may not know specifically exactly what's happening, A, B, and C, but they feel it. And so you might see them getting sick more often, having stomach aches, headaches, just kind of unexplained health issues sometimes that you see happen. Executive function skills, like they can't focus as much at school. They might start drugs and alcohol, kind of numbing themselves because it's just too painful to feel it. It's really hard on the kids, and that's hard on the parents too. But another thing is they start kind of wanting to rescue the parents. So sometimes you see them being a peacemaker, or trying to be a referee, or that here's the child being parentified, trying to help the parents manage their emotions when that's really not their job to do that. Yeah.
I never thought about it like that, but yes, you're absolutely right.
And Lori, I just touching on that point, I've had situations where friends have been married for 30 years. The families and everybody think it's the perfect marriage, and I'm sure that everybody here has seen those. And then all of a sudden there's a divorce, and you're going, "Oh my God, man! I never knew this was going to happen. How are the children doing?" And the answer is, well, the kids knew it was over with 5 years ago. A lot of times the kids know, and they think that really secretly is, I wish mom and dad would split up because the fighting is too much. I see a lot of those situations.
And even if they're not, communicating, like speaking, it's in their body language. It's in the energy that they're putting out. So that can also affect the children. And so, Dawn, should parents prepare themselves legally and emotionally if they believe a split is, coming up, but they want to minimize the harm to the kids?
Absolutely. The court's number one concern is the well-being of children, and parents need to do that too. Okay, and like I said before, unfortunately, people fight over things that really aren't the issue, and this deals with child custody. You've heard of the expression before, using children as pawns, right, Liza?
That's terrible.
That happens all the time, and I think what folks ought to do is not only talk to an attorney, because I'm going to tell them what I think that they should do, but talk to the professionals like this about what a divorce does to children and how to become mature enough to do the right thing. You might have some real strong feelings about that other parent, but the people that you're really hurting are the children. And I defer to the experts here, but child development is impacted by bad breakups. You know, there's been studies, you know, there was one study that was over a 25-year period where they showed that children of divorces, in bad divorces, thrive less, you know, when they get to the adult stage. So, you know, I think that's the preparation I would want all of my clients to do, is to say, wait, can we be mature enough? Can we do it the right way for the sake of the kids? Even though it hurts, can you do that?
Yeah, you have to put all your emotionals aside and just really focus on what's important, which is the children, and because obviously you want your children to thrive, especially in a world today that we're in.
Yeah.
So, and Lisa, how can you help parents begin to let go of that guilt and shift into making an empowered decision for themselves and their children?
Great question. Allow me to start by saying there was a client of mine who brought her 9-year-old for a hypnosis session. So this 9-year-old, the parents were separated. The father was already dating someone, okay? So what the situation was, the 9-year-old was still bedwetting. And no matter what they did, he would still bedwet every time he would go to the father's house, okay? So it got to a point he would come, and the first night he would do the same thing at home, but not during the week. So every time it was a visitation, he would do that. It got to a point that the father's girlfriend did not know what else to do. They cleaned it, they punished, they rewarded, nothing worked. So in hypnosis, on the first session, he got to a relaxation. On the second session, when we're doing the therapy, suddenly he says, but I bring them together, because every time he would bring him home, he was bringing him home. And in his idea, I'm bringing mom and dad together, because they would sit in the kitchen and talk about him. They would have coffee or whatever, so they would spend time. And it was not fighting, it was how to resolve something. So in his mind, and what I did was empower him and say, you're already 9, you're a grown-up boy. Do you still want to do this? Because aren't you happy with daddy's house? Yes. Aren't you happy at home? Yes. Isn't it better to have 2 happy homes and you can be the man of the house here? The moment he accepted that, consciously and subconsciously, the body relaxed and he no longer had to do bedwetting, because there is no reason. See, children are like sponges, especially as little children. They see everything, they hear everything, they take it in. And when we, as parents, we look at the children, they're showing you everything that you need to know. So if it is guilt and everything, what do children really want? They just want your presence, they want hugs, they want love. Not about things you buy in order for them to be busy with, for you to manage yourself. Especially nowadays, all the technical stuff, they put it over there. Okay, you be busy over here while I'm functioning or I'm talking to someone else. So guilt is one of the things. What is it that you're guilty of? Just be present. What is happening between the parents? Okay, if it is a divorce, great. As a domestic abuse consultant, it's one of the things that when ladies come in and we start peeling away either their anxiety or their weight issues or their habits and everything, we realize, I realize, they realize, they're in this cycle that they are like a hamster's wheel, are afraid to come out because of the fears or feeling guilty what would happen to my children. So children, just look at them. They'll give you all the answers.
Yes.
Well, Lori, one of the things that you said is, you know, or you asked about when people are preparing for the breakup and whether they should hang in there for the kids. I think that was part of one of your questions. A lot of people come in and they say, look, we have to stay together because the children need to live in this house and I can't afford this house without him and stuff. And, you know, they become obsessed with the home and they think that that is really what the children really need. You know, I was able to afford a nice home in Pasadena, and God forbid, those kids have to move somewhere else. You know, and I think what Lisa just said really is very meaningful, because it's not about the house. It's not about the things you give them.
It's not the house, it's the home. Here's one thing I can add. I have a client that is going through divorce right now and child custody issues. The 15-year-old daughter does not want to be with that because he takes them to grandma's house and he's not always with them, so it's his turn, but it's grandma's house and she just does not have a good relationship with grandma, so she doesn't want to go to grandma's, but the court will not allow her to stay with mom because it's his time. So I wish the courts would speak to the children more often.
Yeah, maybe Molly could address this issue, is maybe try to explain why the courts do this, is that when a newborn to about maybe 1 year of age, I mean, there's just a complete understanding that there's not going to be like 50-50 custody. The child's going to be mostly with mom, you know, and I believe that there's some science behind that decision.
Personally, I think it depends on who's the warmer parent.
Okay.
Because we can look at an overarching sort of thing, and generally speaking, in our culture, it's the mother who's the caretaker. But I've absolutely seen cases where the father is the warm one, kind one, the caretaking one.
You mean the nurturer?
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So a lot of times that is, it's better. So, but generally speaking, let's go to the mother.
This conversation was deep and necessary, whether you're in the beginning stages, or you're questioning your relationship, or you've been feeling stuck for a long time. Knowing the signs and having a support system matters. And thank you to our incredible guests for their insights today. And if this episode resonated with you, please subscribe and share
Talkin Divorce with Don and Lori.
with someone who needs to hear this. And we'll see you next time as we explore what life is like after divorce and what it really looks like, and how to rebuild with purpose.